Welcome back to The People's Court with me, George Maringa, and joining me on set is Victor Muyakani. The People's Court, every Tuesday, we unpack several issues, and tonight we look at state of the nation. Remember, today has been a day that has witnessed mass protests, especially in Nairobi's CBD, on the Finance Bill 2024-2025. Later on in the day, we did see the government through the Finance Committee speak about the proposals of taxes that had been scrapped off. But even then, towards late evening, the Azimio coalition came out to say that still as is, the Finance Bill 2024 is still punitive to Kenyans. Tonight, we ask, which way, Kenya?
Absolutely. These are just some of the questions that we wish to ask. We have a panel here, but this is not our show, it's your show. So we invite you to take part in this in the best way possible. The SMS line will be on your screen the whole time. The WhatsApp number will also be on your screen the whole time. God willing, if time allows, we'll also be able to field some phone calls from you in the course of this discussion, and all that will be coming right here. We'll be able to ask our guests the questions, and we will be able to have you express your views and reviews on today's biggest news. But all that and so much more coming up in the course of the next hour and a half of this discussion.
Absolutely. And tonight we are privileged to have a panel of experts in their own right. And to my immediate right, we do have Victor Ogola, SME expert. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us in the program. Seated with him on that set is Ambassador Esther Waringa, President, Public Service Governance. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. On the far end desk, which is comprised of three gentlemen. I'll begin on my right is Kevin Mubadi, National Chair, Boda Boda Safety Association of Kenya. And next to him is Ronald Bosi, Group Managing Partner, Ronald's Africa. Welcome. And finally is CPA Martin Waweru, Nitram Accountants Africa, CPAK. Gentlemen and lady, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. First of all, I think this is a win for this program, because last time you were here last week and we said we made an appeal to the gentlemen of the country to please give the ladies a visa to come out for programs like this at night, because last week we had an entirely male panel. You were serving testosterone on air? Yeah, we were serving testosterone on air. I mean, so we're happy to report that there's progress. Hopefully, this looks like the same progress that Kenyans have been able to achieve with tonight, you know, after the push and pull on the streets. And tonight you might nickname that table the purple table. The purple table. The purple. I can see that. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. Also, they're both bespectacled. Yeah. Now, listen, away from the similarities and everything, and perhaps we may start with the purple table. Victor, talk to me from where you sit. What's your assessment of the events of the day?
I think it's a culmination of years of frustration. I think we know the general statistics in terms of employment. We have close to 1 million young people who join the labor market annually. We have poverty rates of upwards of 30%. The formal sector has not been employing young people. Informal sector has been growing but lacks support. So there are very few opportunities going around for young people to make an economic living for themselves. So I think the finance bill and the extra pressure that we've seen from government in terms of push for extra revenue has really pushed the young people in Kenya to the edge, and that's why we are seeing a very high tempo that is taking place in Kenya. And of course, there is a sense that every time we do public participation, there's a sense that government chooses to ignore and push forward its agenda. We saw that with the Finance Bill 2023. We've seen that with the housing levy. I mean, all interventions that we see or proposed by government, there's a high likelihood of it ignoring the masses. And I think this is now what we are seeing in terms of the anger that we've experienced today in Nairobi, at least.
All right, Ambassador, in brief, what's your view from where you sat?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Look at today. Karibu sana.
Yeah, I think I've already said when you blow air into a balloon and it gets to its limits. What's the next thing? It bursts. So today, I think Kenyans has been breathing carbon dioxide. They have not had oxygen. That means they have not had good life in terms of what they expect after paying taxes. They expected service delivery, but they are not getting it. This is now a very clear image of incompetence in government. It is very clear that there are so many gaps that are existing in service delivery. Because if the Kenyan taxpayer pays taxes and get water, education, food on the table, stabilization in business, stabilization in manufacturing, and of course, the small-scale businesses that he has just talked about. If they are running efficiently and effectively, there was no reason for Kenyans to be in the streets. But now, nothing is happening. Also, we question our electoral process. Who are these people that we elected into government? Secondly, the level of competence. When we hear of cabinet ministers, I think it's for the first time in the Republic of Kenya that we are having a group of incompetent, high level of incompetence that is demonstrated. We cannot be talking that we ask a question on bread and you are telling us that bread is being taxed because of diabetes. Come on, and you are at that high level almost of a cabinet minister, because a chair of like finance committee should be a person who equals to be a cabinet minister in the Republic of Kenya. So when Kenyans give their 1 shilling, 2 shillings in form of taxes, you squeeze them technically to give every coin that they have, and then you don't give them you don't give them services. Of course, this is what we are seeing in testing. The balloon has burst, right. And of course, maji kimwagika hayazoreki.
All
the
right.
Government, over to you. Think of what to do next.
Indeed, right. Mr. Mubadi, you represent a huge and hugely youthful population in this country, both as a youth leader, but also the people that you look after, the members of your association, are largely youthful. From where you sit and from where your members were observing, because your members are everywhere, what did you see and what sense did it make to you?
Okay, honestly, today my people lost business because for us, we depend on ferrying people from one point to another. And when you looked at the town, there was a running battles, tear gas all over. So we didn't make anything today, and which is very regrettable. We just hope that the long-lasting solution is found, because for us, we don't depend on anything else. We depend on carrying people within a peaceful environment. So whenever there is any chaos, there is any challenge of movement, then we are hugely affected. So today it was a negative for us.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Bosi, karibu sana. Talk to us. What did you see? What sense did it make to you?
Today was a unique day in its sense, because it demonstrated the majority of a chasm that exists between the government and the people. Because the rift has been growing day by day, and it started in the last year's finance bill, whereby the government came up with a lot of tax measures, some of them that were very devastating. The housing levy that was introduced last year, VAT on fuel, and that has made life very difficult. And we have had other measures that increase in the NSSF rates, increase in the NHIF rates that are supposed to commence. And that has been making citizens a bit very aggrieved by the government. There's been a very big rift happening day by day. And today was the maturity date. And the Finance Act, thanks to it, actually brought that to an explosion. And we saw that now you don't need leadership in difficult. Leadership will always find itself even in difficult times, because we've always thought that it's the opposition, and maybe the government thought that because we've managed to tame the opposition, the Prime Minister being preoccupied with the AU job, maybe things are managed. But you realize that even without him, there was a new leadership and a new uprising forming that is going to make it very difficult even for the government. Yeah, so that is what I make sense of today, the maturity of a growing rift between the people and the government.
All right.
Yeah.
And Mr. Oweru, of course, what are your views?
Surprisingly, my day was good. I didn't encounter that protests. But that said, it depends with your day's occupation, and maybe what you have heard, what you have gathered. And I can say since morning, because maybe as you go to work, you are on radio, you can hear what are people's views. And as such, yes, there is that agitation of we are being pressed so much. And maybe it's the call that the government would seek alternative avenues of raising revenue to finance its operations. One thing that remains is that every day, even as from individual perspective, you need income. So, but as an entrepreneurial person, you need to be always creative and innovative. And that is what I may say that the government needs to look beyond what they have been kind of really taxing and get alternatives. So that then we try to widen the base to finance that which we are looking forward to. Because it's true we need development, but who is financing this? And what other measures can we take so that we have more disposable income that everyone can enjoy?
Right. Now, I want, George, is just about to jump in, but before I let you go for a short while, as an accountant, you've looked at this thing, I hope. One of the major gripes about this process is that the math, quite simply, is not making sense. I ask you tonight, is the math making sense to you? The math that the government is proposing to fund this budget, to look after all the different things, is it making sense?
Well, yes, and it may be no, depending on where you sit. Mm-hmm. And we were sharing before we came into the studio, and we said, even from an individual level, you always look for growth. And that's the nature of every human being. You look for growth. But then, what are your strategies for growth? So when I look at the general overview of the finance bill, there are those who are gaining, there are those who feel they are being oppressed. So it is now to look into the areas of who is gaining and how do we relieve pain of those who feel much oppressed. Because there will always be that I'm not comfortable, and you can't please everyone. So for me, I'm that person of I am proactive to ensure that that which I'm looking for is achieved. Mm. So for this finance bill, what would government do better than squeezing that very one they have had over time? When they are talking of expanding the base to increase the revenue, what is that they are looking to bring on board? And maybe with today's demonstration, we talk of the youths. Mm-hmm. Have these youths been brought to the financing of development of the country? Mm-hmm. We are talking of the digital space. Have they started chipping in a small way? So to me, that's an avenue to increase, other than the employee who has no way of increasing, but still being targeted. So we need to ask, who is this who is complaining? So that we say, is it favoring or is it not favoring?
Indeed, pertinent questions that
absolutely
have been asked, and we look forward also to hearing what you have to say on the socials on X at Muyakane, at TV47 News, at George Maringa _ Our SMS line 22047 is on. We want to take a short commercial break as you simmer on those preliminary
points,
remarks.
the first round.
Yeah, the first round.
Right.
As we look at what has been going on, especially later today. You can tell us how you also participated in these. If you also chose to demonstrate, we are seeing what you're saying on social media, but perhaps how was your day as well? That and much more coming your way in just a short while after this short commercial break. Do stay with us.
Small one, huyo ana sniff
Welcome back. You're watching The People's Court right here on TV47 with me, George Maringa, and Victor Muyakane. Tonight, as we assess the state of the nation, we look at matters, of course, that transpired during the day, and also tonight we will attempt to look at, find a cure, if any, and even assess how the future will need to look like. Remember, we've already entered the new financial year. And, before we enter the break, of course, we had from, our CPA expert in studio tonight, telling us about what exactly, how this situation is like. And, he said it depends on how you look at it. And I want to come to the SME, expert, because your industry and your sector is one that has been said to be closing shop because of how, things have been. Could you paint a picture of what, from a personal experience or from what you're hearing, on the ground, especially from your sector?
Yeah, so I think generally, if you look at the economy, the country has, in terms of GDP, the country has been growing the last 10 years at around 5% or so. But if you look at it keenly, that growth has been public sector expenditure driven. Okay. So private sector has not been playing a major role in terms of economic output. And if you look at data, you see even manufacturing, the share of GDP manufacturing to GDP, manufacturing contribution to GDP has steadily been declining over the years. Largely, you find that Kenya's economy is driven by wholesale retail. And within wholesale retail, there is high risk in terms of being exposure to systemic risk. Noting during COVID, you saw the economy tank. Of course, this is where majority of the MSMEs are. Yes. So that's and successful government have not been able to support small businesses in terms of programs. And even right now, if you look at the appropriations bill or the budget policy statement in terms of once we collect this money, where are we investing this money? We see that it is very weak. And that's why for me, I think, or even from an SME perspective, we feel that there's a big focus in terms of finance bill, in terms of this is how we want to raise revenue. But even when you raise that revenue, where are this money being allocated to? Are they being allocated to support businesses, or are they being used to pay debt? So I think this is the quagmire that we find ourselves in, and I suspect that if we continue with this trajectory, we might not, number one, be able to collect the taxes that we project. Because even as we talk about finance bill, these are just numbers on paper. We want the you want for the economy to grow and carry to collect. But if the people that you purport to collect from don't grow or close shop, then probably we might find ourselves in a very difficult or sticky situation.
A good number, a percentage of those we saw protesting are, also in the age group called Gen Z. And, I was just passing by earlier during the day, and, someone whispered to their colleague, and they said, these Gen Zs do not have stable jobs. These Gen Zs are not employed, and they were speaking in terms of like lending capacities and being able to, but now you can tell it was in a financial institution, being able to lend to young people or to a populace so that they can be able to establish a business. When you look at how the current environment is, do you think it is very conducive for one to establish an SME?
So that's the challenge. We have around 1 million young people entering the labor market. If you look at the formal employment or the formal sector, it doesn't have the capacity to absorb them. So looking at successive economic review by CBK and KNBS, we see that 80%, close to 80% of these young people who join the labor market are employed within small, medium enterprises. But the challenge with that, with the SME, is that a majority of them are in wholesale retail, because the environment does not allow for young people to enter into manufacturing, value addition, and now even the digital economy. We see the moment we saw young people get into that space and make a bit of income, government has come and is saying, you know what, we are taxing the digital economy. Mind you, in terms of digital economy, it's a very nascent sector. It's less than 0.5% in terms of penetration. It's still bado haijashika. Yet you're seeing government coming and saying we want to tax something that is still nascent. And I think this is where we see the gripe from young people who are saying we are content creators, we do TikTok, we do this stuff, we sell through Instagram. And we are seeing government coming to tax that, where the profits are not as good. So if you're taxing me before I start even doing my business, then what are you saying? You want to completely cripple me. And I think this is where the anger is coming from.
Yeah, Ambassador, I'm seeing here, a comment from a Kenyan saying, stop tear gassing Kenyans, police. They are fighting for their rights. You can, start with your question, where you're watching us from, your name as well, so that you're able to also track your feedback. When you look even at the models, you've spoken about the leadership, what is there. When you're looking at the modes of addressing what is a constitutional right in, defending or being able to exercise their Kenya's democratic freedom and right to picket, do you think that perhaps the ghosts of the past are echoing at us?
One, Kenyans have a constitutional right to picket, to demonstrate, and even the Constitution gives the people of Kenya freedom of expression. So when we see the police, and especially in plain clothes, that's not supposed to happen. One, the police are supposed to be in full gear when they are going to execute their duties. So that must be taken care of. Then number two, Kenyans has an express authority and freedom of making their grievances known to the public. So whatever was happening today, Kenyans could have been allowed to continue airing what they think is airing them as a country. Because when shall we listen as a government if Kenyans come out in their peaceful nature and before maybe even they express what is in their hearts, you are tear gassing them? Are we negating the provisions of the Constitution? Are we negating the freedom of expression? Are we negating that Kenyans have a right to equally participate in such an important process as the finance bill process in the Republic of Kenya? And sometimes if they feel angered, if they feel maybe they are not being heard, because we saw in Finance Bill 2023, what happened? Public participation all over. Mama Mboga left her marketplace and went to do public participation in the various social halls. But what happened? The public participation provisions or whatever came from Wanjiko was never considered. So what is happening today? Today what was happening is like, you people, we attend your public participation sessions, but what do? You ignore us. Today, we are coming also to prove that we are the same people who voted you in. And you know what? We can recall you back if you don't act. And that's why the government came in and acted very quickly. So we would like to remind the government that they are not there to take care of their own interest. We would also like to remind them, I'm now talking from the public service desk, we would also like to remind them that the reason why any government comes into position is to be able to create a conducive environment for its own citizens to thrive and to be successful in their own nation. But when you oppress Kenyans and now they start going to Uganda, they start going to Tanzania, they start going to Ethiopia, what are you telling us? Are you telling us that you are now incapable of creating a conducive environment for Kenyans to live in their own country? That's what Kenyans were talking today, and that's the strong message that that Kenyans sent to the government today. Right. And Kenyans have a right to recall. Kenyans can send you home. So remember that they are the same people who voted you in. Right. You know they usually say turiamka mapema. So even now they will say tutaamka mapema kuwatoa katika hizo viti za uongozi.
Here's a question for you.
Yes.
In what the government was saying, well, the face of the government,
yes,
the parliamentary group, the UDA cohort, what they said, one of the things they said is this, that we're following the Constitution. There was public participation. We listened to the people. In fact, the list of things that, there's about 11 elements, 11 points of things that either have been adjusted or stricken off entirely. They said it was based off of what the people told us. So we are actually listening to you, but we're just following the Constitution. Why is that not being heard? What response do you have to what the government is saying towards that?
Number one, I would ask them, if you are reacting and removing these taxation measures within hours of Wanjiko's demonstration, didn't you know that you are doing wrong when drafting the bill?
Actually, they're saying...
Were you not supposed to know what Wanjiko needs as a representative of Wanjiko before prompting that bill into the public domain? Didn't you know? Because if they were serious, how come that they changed it within hours? Is it hoodwinking? Is it trying to impress Kenyans for a few minutes? Then they go, then when Kenyans cool down, they will go back into their true colors. I think it's a high time we stop praying with on governance issues. It's a high time we understand what we mean by good governance. Whatever they did today, my dear friend, was not good governance. That's not demonstration of good governance. A government must be able to learn what its people requires. That bill, the finance bill in the first place, before it goes through the first reading, it should have captured the feeling of Wanjiko. The president and his team must know that bread is an everyday meal in this country. How do you then go and attach a 16% on it? The government must know that every other day, they're telling us they are opening digital centers throughout the country. How do you then go behind our youth and tax the same that you are saying that we are going to create jobs through digitization? The same government has opened these, what we call, in various counties, they are called county industrial centers. Then immediately after that, the cost of manufacturing shoots up. Today, as we talk, as my brother here has said, manufacturing industry that has been building the GDP of this country is almost collapsing. Manufacturers are jetting out of the country. Actually, as public service governance on the 5th of July, we have a business, trade and investment summit to discuss what is wrong with the government in terms of taking care of the private sector that has been injecting quite a huge chunk to the GDP of the country. So I think it's a high time Ruto and your government
you think it's mind games?
Get to know what we mean by governance.
You think they're playing mind games?
If not, Wakenya wako tayari kuwatoa. Okay, what are you asking?
To be clear, you're saying the government is playing mind games with the response?
Yes, I think they need to understand what we mean by good government.
All right.
Up to now, they don't know.
All right,
let me
bring in the others. Mr. Mubadi,
yes.
Your team, members of your team, were they involved or were you involved in the public participation process for this bill?
Okay, you see, as the madam said, maybe we were involved in the public participation, but maybe some of the views were not taken in. But what I'm happy about the situation today, or what came out from the State House after their discussion, you heard them talking about they're not going to tax the border, the eco levy, and all those things. So I think that is a gain for us because we also lobbied for it. Once you start taxing these motorcycles, then it will mean that the prices will go up and will be for an inch, and will be unable to purchase. And you see many young people, they don't have finances to purchase motorcycle on cash. It will mean that they are going through creditors. And once the motorcycles are expensive, then the credit will also be higher than the normal rate that they can easily afford. So this makes life for them very difficult. So for that, we appreciate the government for what they did, that they removed all this some taxes from our motorcycle equipment, and also said when it will be manufactured here, then that means there will be no more taxes on manufactured motorcycle here. So what we request from the government is just to give the investors the ample time, ample space to invest. You see, they can open one door and lock another one, because when they make it difficult for investors to invest, then it means they will not be able to invest. Will have to import the bikes, and when all the bikes that are being imported, they are expensive because they have the taxes.
By the way, those a tax that had been proposed on lithium batteries for the electric bodabodas.
Yes.
What are your feelings about that?
You know,
especially the adjustments on that.
That was making it more expensive. One, the motorcycle battery is very expensive. That's why you can't buy it. You can't even afford an electric motorcycle. If you want to buy it cash, it is above 200,000 plus. So what is happening that you have to go and swap the batteries. So the motorcycle seller or the manufacturer or the person who is dealing with the motorcycles owns the battery. So for your work is to go there and swap. Once they become expensive, then the bikes will be more expensive than how it is right now. And that was now our challenge. We are going to e-mobility. And when we go to e-mobility, then it should be cheaper than even the current mobility that we have that is using the petrol. So the taxes were making the batteries expensive, making it unaffordable to the young people to purchase. So if they remove the eco levy, then we'll be good at least.
So to be clear, you appreciate some of the adjustments.
Yes, you know.
But you feel the government should do more. They're not
in life you need to appreciate first. When you are given something small, you have to appreciate whatever you have given. Then you demand for more. Right. So we appreciate the lead they have done for us as a government to the border sector. That one we want to appreciate the president, because he also insisted to the chairman. I heard him insisting that you must talk about the border issue. Right. And the chairman clarified that there's no taxes. But on the other hand, they need to do more, create an economic environment that more investors can invest, so that these things are available to the young people of this country. When you look at the people that were demonstrating, the young people, there was someone of maybe 40, 45 years and above. When you look at that gender, that age limit.
What does that tell you? What does that tell you? That
tells us that there's no job opportunities in this country. Because if those guys were employed, they will not be on Mandamano. Right. But the good thing, you will see that there was no border on that demonstration today, because they are trying to earn their living. They are busy trying to earn a living. That's why they didn't join. So if this motorcycle then become cheaper, those young people that were on the street will come and join us and do our business of border. Yeah.
Mr. Bosi, I want you to jump on this point. One of the things that emerges from this discussion, but also from the social listening that we've been doing, is that there's a lot of talking, but very few people are listening. On the government side, there's a lot of communication. They're saying a lot of things. But one of the officers from the government, they said, look, nobody's listening to what we're saying. We are following the Constitution. This is what the process says. And hey, 1 + 1 = 2. But the people are saying, like what Madam Ambassador is talking about, If you had your ear to the ground as government, you would know that this would be unpopular. So why put it in the first place? Talk to us about this communication breakdown that appears to be happening right now.
Yeah, the biggest challenge we have with the government today is lack of empathy in their communication. When you listen to what they're saying, there is no connection with the ground. There is a lot of arrogancy. There hasn't been a lot of clarity in terms of even communication of where we are going as a country. And also this arrogance, and the reason why today we have had this kind of demonstrations is also culminating from the previous years. The experience that we had with the housing levy, and it dragged through courts, but they still force it on Kenyans, more punitive than even the way it was before the public participation. So Kenyans were more aware now that the government doesn't listen and the government doesn't seem to care, and the government doesn't understand where they are in terms of the economic well-being of the country. So that was a revolt on the government, lack of empathy, lack of clarity in terms of communicating where they are going. Because if you look at it, the government has had some good things, has done some good things that Kenyans could recognize. And one of the things is you have issues like the food prices. They have managed to actually manage some of the food costs in this country. They've invested a lot in the fertilizer and all that.
Fuel prices as well?
Fuel prices, at least they've gone down, but of course we've told because of the global prices. And then we've had the currency, of course it's come to a lower level, but again we hope that they'll be able to sustain that, especially when they have the repayment of the Eurobond. And so they have done some few good things, but then the problem is the way they communicate. And also too, the problem is the leaders within the government. We look at it like the president has lost the politicians, because initially he used to have the politicians on his side, and he's also had the citizens on his side. Now when you look at it, the divide, the rift in the government, even in the political side, he's lost the politicians, and now today he seemingly has lost the citizens. So most probably there is a lack of that kind of trust even in the PSAs. The way you say the incompetency is so rampant, and that has boiled down. And then the other issue that we have is because again, you cannot just be talking and without service delivery. There are some basic things in this country that could be fixed without necessarily raising taxes. Do you need money to fix IDs, to get people get IDs? Because there are so many people employed to process IDs for the citizens. And the people you're talking about, Gen Z, some of them have had trouble getting IDs and increasing the cost of acquiring IDs. Do you need money to fix the service delivery in terms of the immigration? Do you need money to fix the service delivery in the processing of certificate of good conduct? There are things that are so basic. Do you need money even to get the city clean, because people still pay money to the county government in terms of levies, business permits, but the city is in a mess, so disorganized, insecurity, garbage on the streets, on the highways. There is no water even in some of the estates, and you're still just talking about housing and the levy, increasing the taxes and levies. So there isn't very well articulation of what the government wants to achieve by these increasing taxes, and that is what has led to the animosity between the citizens and the government. So that is where the president needs to move so fast to fix his cabinet, to make sure that he has competent people. Otherwise, he's going to go down with this incompetency in the public sector, because without that competent leadership, the PSAs, the CSAs, he's going to lose it. The faster he realizes that and makes his changes, the more then he will be able to fix the rift between the citizens and the government.
All right, right. I've just one more follow-up question for Mr. Aweru. Yes. Now, we've seen some adjustment. For example, the VAT on normal bread has been removed, the VAT on sugar transportation, VAT on financial services and foreign exchange transactions removed, the 2.5% proposed motor vehicle tax removed. There will be no increase in mobile money transfers. That's one of the other things. Excise duty on vegetable oil. We've seen the eco levy being adjusted only on imported finished products. Good people of Kenya, I urge you to go down the list. It's a long list of about I can see, 11 items. Some of the other things like excess duty on alcoholic beverages will be calculated based on alcoholic content and some of those things. So in a nutshell, there's some adjustments that are being made. But you had talked to us a little bit earlier about, hey, this is a government attempting to find money to fund a budget. So if these adjustments are being made, where do you think this money will be found? What options exist for government? But also, in line with what Madam Ambassador was saying, what other things behind the scenes might be employed to be able to raise this money? Because the money has to come from somewhere.
Thank you so much. And expanding the tax base means looking into different areas that have not contributed to the kitty. For example, we have development partners that have been supporting projects in different areas of intervention, say health, education, and they go down to the counties. And I'm happy that in the office of the Deputy President, they are formed an office to look into development partners' contribution into the Kenyan economy. But then you go to the counties and you find duplication of the different development partners in pursuit of the same intervention. And you may find that counties are struggling with resource, like personnel. And I can tell you because I have, in one way or the other, I've consulted for counties through the devolution program. You find county does not have the resource for monitoring and evaluation. Come to the other arm of development partners, they have so much of these resources. Why can't these development partners say, we'll support the county government in giving this resource? That way, they have contributed. Now, that is a contribution towards what we are looking for, funding of projects. That's one way of looking at it. Creation of employments. I've been struggling with when the government is saying of establishing digital villages and telling the youths, bonyeza upate hera. And as he has said, we have so many graduates entering the market, but we are not specific into what area are you going to specialize in, so that how do you create employment or how do you create entrepreneurship? It is, you need to satisfy a need in the market. And so you give a solution. So if the solution is, and we need to look outside, we are even talking of ACFTA. We are talking of Africa as the market. So, and Kenyans are very aggressive. And I can say these youths have a lot of papers, but are they employable? Are they looking into opportunities beyond the borders? So for me, actually, I may not really challenge the government into terms of, it is to create more favorable opportunities and open the markets for the youths. Right now, if I may speak about as an accountant, how do I look for areas that accounting profession is global? The principles stand out, they remain. But we have countries in Africa that need accountants. These youths who have no much of responsibilities, how do they become employable into that market? And the other day when we had Moses Kuria in the CS investment and trade, he was trying to open the labor. And one time he said, we are exporting this kind of labor. I asked myself, how many are there of the accountants going out? So that we had crisis of forex. So we have a lot of remittance into the country. This is contribution to what we are looking for. So for me is to, how do we tap into more emerging opportunities? And then there is always a first time. These youths have not contributed to the national cake. So even if we say, yes, you told us about digital, But did you ever think about when you'll start contributing? And mind you, they could be earning a lot than those who are in a formal employment. So for me, I'm okay to bring them on board, but gradual.
Absolutely. I want us to take a short commercial break, but I have a yes or no question for you all. There has been the conversation of budgeting, and the question actually, the thorn in the flesh for me has been, are we budgeting for corruption? So, and I'll ask all of you before we head to the break. Do you think we are budgeting for corruption as a country? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
That's a tough one.
Wow. No.
Oh, okay. And you?
Yes, we are budgeting for corruption.
What about you?
No.
What about you?
It's evident, yes.
Evident, yes.
A resounding yes.
A resounding yes. The ayes have it, so we'll take a short break.
Maybe they'll expound when they come back.
Yes, and indeed, that's
And the people at home should contribute.
Absolutely, and we'll be able to,
Maybe they should answer that question.
Yeah, they'll answer that question when you come back after this short commercial break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching The People's Court right here on TV47 with me, George Maringa, and Victor Muyakane on this side of the studio. Some feedback here. Good evening, TV47. If the police should not arrest people when in civilian clothes, why don't we see the LSK take the Inspector General to court? Kindly help us by going to court or by petitioning the AG to make a legal pronouncement on the same. John Washira from Eastleigh, thank you for your feedback. And before we went for the break, we put out a question, a poll, and there was a resounding yes, especially even from you.
3 yeses, 2 no's.
3 yeses, 2 no's. And the ayes have it. So why do you think, why did you say yes?
I think it's common sense. We see the level of corruption that just officially in terms of cases from EACC, DCI, and we see a lot of public service, public officers going through the rings of that process. And ideally, even the product of corruption is evident in terms of what we see happening on the ground. Without naming someone, we saw someone, giving in a Harambee almost 20 million shillings in a single Harambee. You ask yourself, even if you are the wealthiest person or you run the most successful business, can you be able to, in a single day, give out a contribution of even $1 million? In which part of the economy, which sector are you operating that you can be able to give as cash, some a contribution? So I think the evidence is just there. And of course, we can see the impact of that in terms of the stagnation of economic growth. Like I said, Kenya's GDP grows, but it is public sector driven. Service sector is trying, but again, if you look at banks that are doing well, they are doing that not by lending to SMEs or lending to private sector, but lending to government. That's why we see, say for example, banks are doing very well. That, we see their loan book not more than 20% lending to SMEs. Looking at manufacturing, they are crying. We've seen manufacturers saying that we are going to shift if things go like this. Manufacturers in Kenya are 13% higher in terms of cost compared to their counterparts in the region. So the question is, for how long can we be able to sustain this trajectory in terms of a decline in terms of economic output? So I think corruption is a major issue, and I think one of the feedback that you see is a lot of people are saying, even as we are saying, no one is saying we don't want to pay tax. It is how this money is used, number one, and the level of privilege that we see in terms of once the money is collected, we see either misallocation or suboptimal investment in sectors that we think we should be able to see growth. And of course, corruption is the major thing. Even the former president indicated that, as a country, we lose almost, I don't know how many, 2 billion shillings, I think in a day or something. So if a whole president can even admit on national TV, who are we to say that it's not budgeted for?
I want to come to you, Sir Ronald. When you look at the amendments and the suggestions that we saw today, some have been some taxes have been repealed. But when you look at some suggestions rather. Yeah. The motor vehicle tax may have gone, but the road maintenance levy is being bumped up to rather 38.9% to 25 shillings per litre from the current 18 shillings. So this therefore means, in the current price cycle, super could move from 189 all the way up to 196. When you look at all these cost indications, and you did say that the fuel prices, you've seen what's happening globally, that could be the indication. Looking at the global dynamics, and in a country that has been the gateway for East Africa and perhaps the continent in general, are we heading in a direction or in a trajectory that could be positive, or are we charting our own path that has its gains in the future? Because this government has said, give us more time.
Yeah, I think one of the best thing that this government do in terms of benchmarking is benchmarking how to tax Kenyans. They never benchmark anything else. They don't benchmark on service delivery. They only benchmark how can we tax Kenyans in comparison to France. How can we compare with US? But you never say, by the way, France, this is the cost of doing business in France. This is the service quality that people in France receive, and try to expedite that. So the issue in Kenya is, if there is anything that seemingly is doing very well, you tax it until it's out of function. So you see, like the fuel, instead of leaving it to stabilize, to come down, to reduce the cost of distribution and all that, you now increasing the fuel levy on the fuel, so that Kenyans still pay high prices. And you see, the challenge again, there's a very little that is being done in terms of economic impact assessment, in terms of the taxation that you're talking about. Because you see, the tragedy is, if you tax fuel, the problem with the taxation on fuel and even the most indirect taxes that are being introduced, because they have almost exhausted their direct taxes, because they've increased the corporation tax, they've increased the tax on the pay-as-you-earn and all that. So now, because they have exhausted almost all the tax levels in terms of direct taxes, they've resulted to indirect taxes. The problem with the indirect taxes, you tax everybody in spite of their income. And you've heard even the president himself alluding to the fact that we are trying to tax people comparable to the GDP. And you see, when you talk about the GDP and you've talked about banks, they are the most beneficiaries of when you talk about the growth in GDP. But what are you doing? You're not taxing the banks. You are introducing tax on the bank charges that are being incurred by poor people, and therefore punishing even people at the lower level of the pyramid by increasing the indirect taxes, like on fuel, like the VAT on even like the other tax that is also ridiculous in this is the putting VAT on the passenger motor vehicles. When you import things and you assemble passenger vehicles, you put VAT on it, and yet you know very well, if you are doing passenger business, those businesses don't attract VAT. So when you put there, you are just passing you are actually increasing the cost of transport. And then now you're increasing the fuel levy. So it's actually putting people in, like putting a cat in the room and beating it so hard. So we are yet to see even more tougher revolutions happening in the future if the government continues trending in this way. Yeah.
So, Madam Ambassador, when you look at, the whole situation over the last 5 months, when the budget making process started, in fact, more than 5, when we look at how the situation has been, the government says the Finance Bill 2023 had its gains. Over the time, there have been so many complaints about this whole sector. I mean, this whole situation we are in as a country. So when you look at the state of the nation as it is right now, do you think that we are in a place where we could, salvage the situation? And what should the government ideally do in as much as there are, vis-a-vis promises and manifesto and the current situation? What exactly would be the cure to all this hullabaloo?
Thank you. One thing I want to say is that we must be truthful. We must uphold integrity. We must hold Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya in its entirety. We must take care of the words that come out of our mouth as government, and especially as the head of state. Because when we talk about that the economy is growing, and I think I listened from some circles today, and it was like finance bill was very progressive, and now as a result, the country has grown, the economy has grown. The trajectory of the growth or the growth of the economy should be able to impact positively to the lives of people. So how do you then relate the statement that the economy has grown as a result of Finance Bill 2023, yet the same people who you are saying that have been affected, have been probably benefited positively from Finance Bill were on the streets today. So it's a high time that before we make any public statement, number one, we must weigh what we are releasing into the public. Is it for the, is it political statement? And this is where it gets to a time where I say, I think if we've never had elections 2027, we couldn't be seeing what we are seeing today. But electoral cycles, too expensive, too tribalistic, too destructive, too violent, too tribalistic, that is elections. Are we able at some point as Kenya, the Republic, to take a total paradigm shift and we talk of Kenya bila uchaguzi? I want to remind Kenyans that we have 3 arms of government: the judiciary, the legislature, the executive. The judiciary, the president of the judiciary was never elected. She never campaigned. How much money did we spend to position the president of the judiciary? Vis-a-vis, how much did we spend as an economy to position the president and the head of state of the Republic of Kenya? Is there a possibility that we all embrace vetting and appointment of leaders other than going into expensive, violent, destructive, divisive elections? So, if we are to heal as a nation, we must be able to analyze now, going forward, what is leadership? Who is a leader? what is governance? What do we mean by good and bad governance? So the state of the nation today is a pure demonstration of what we mean by bad governance. A government that is not in charge, a government that has to be influenced by street demonstration to make a statement that they made today. That is a proof of bad governance within governance circles. Good governance is when a government in power is able to make decisions that will always impact positively to the lives of the people who voted them in. But unfortunately, what we are seeing today is what they call is our time to eat. And that is why you are asking us this question. Were budgets made or projected with maybe a given percentage of theft? Or because there is no way you can be telling us that the budget is 4 trillion, but in the actuals, like for example, you give the Exchequer or the National Treasury releases like 70% of development money to go to the counties, but we get only 20% or less of the same money in terms of development. So all these gaps must be checked into. And number 3, corruption. Corruption has become a big thorn in the flesh of our country's development agenda. That even to do a road between Githurai and Nairobi, how much money am I going to pocket out of this? If I am going to construct a classroom, how much money am I making out of this? If I am to maybe do a few government tenders, how much money am I going to make out of these tenders? So every agency of government is basically controlled by how much money they are making away from the budget. So our budget process is even, I would say, the most corrupted, because it's like, how much money are we going to make out of Finance Bill 2024? And I think away from what they are telling us, the 4 trillion, we should be having something to do with 2 trillion based on the need. A need-based budget will give us lesser than that. But because there is 2-3 shillings, 2-3 shillings for this member of parliament, 2-3 shillings for this governor, 2-3 shillings for the head of state, 2-3 shillings for whoever else. That's why it's shooting all the way to that amount. And then we are left with a huge deficit. A good steward or a good manager or a good finance person should be able to give us or give Kenyans a budget that is based on needs.
Yeah, before Victor comes in,
Yes.
I have a question for you, Victor. Is there a hope for anyone who wishes to set up an SME in this country?
Based on the type of support from the budget policy statement, I think the situation is dire. So when we look at the budgeting cycle, we have on one hand the revenue raising measures, which is a finance bill, but then we also have the budget policy statement and the appropriations bill, which talks about how government is going to spend this money. So that has always been the challenge. And I have a couple, I was just looking at the, a report from KRA.
Yes.
In 2011, financial year 2011-2012, KRA was collecting around 707 billion. 10 years down the line, that collection has doubled. So KRA is collecting over 1 trillion. So the question is, if we have doubled our revenue collection over the last 10 years, are we not supposed to see a concurrent growth in economic output? That's number one. Number two is we see also consistently every year KRA in terms of growth of collection going higher than economic growth. I'll give you an example of the financial year 2023. KRA's collection grew by 6.7 annually, but the economy grew at 5%. So you can see government is on a gear of collecting, and this of course we can see elasticity in terms of it has reached a point where you can't collect anymore. So what needs to happen is government must start investing on small businesses. Government must start investing on not just people to do wholesale retail, but for young people to enter into manufacturing. This can literally increase your excise duty. The proportion of excise duty in terms of revenue collection is around 11%. For you to expand that is not to tax the existing manufacturers, is to incentivize young people to enter into manufacturing. Then, of course, you can be able to tax that, and probably you can be able to increase the tax base. What is happening is government does not want to invest in programs that can be able to support economic growth. What we see is either housing, we see roads, we see SGR, but these are investments that cannot give an economic output. And I think this is where our push in terms of advocacy has to go, in terms of how can we be able to hold our ministries accountable to the programs that they have. We see on the budget policy statement as an example, the introduction of the county industrial parks, where government is saying we are going to build an industrial park in different counties. Where is the market? How are you going to put young people into that particular facility? It doesn't articulate that in the budget policy statement. But you see government saying we are doing manufacturing. But at the same time, our electricity, in terms of, if you have to compare with our peers, is high. If you look at taxation within counties, looking at different licenses, it's still high. There is no incentives for young people to enter into agribusiness, into manufacturing. And that's why I think the situation becomes dire, in the sense that, yes, you can tax this year, but I don't think we can be able to tax next year in terms of revenue collection. And I think that's where we need to have our focus on.
All right. I mean, now, let's shift to a different angle. And I'd like to bring in Mr. Mubadi to this conversation at this point. And here's a question to you. Your organization has existed for quite some time. And one would argue there's been a fair amount of success in terms of engaging with government and getting some things that you can actually take back to your members. What lessons can we learn? What lessons can you give us? What examples can you give us of how to engage with government in the right way to be able to get value for the people that you represent? This is something that everyone who runs an organization, everyone who runs a CBO or any sort of association can learn from. Because people are wondering, how do I talk to this big thing called government, and how do I get some value out of it?
Okay, from what I've learned personally is, first of all, you must be respectful. You know, the people that are in government, they are human beings. So immediately you are unrespectful to them, they'll not listen to you. So first of all, as a leader of any organization that want to get something from the government, you must first of all have the respect that you deserve from any other person. Secondly, you must be persistent to whatever that you are chasing. Because, you know, it is not easy to work with the government. You'll go today, they'll chase you away. You'll go tomorrow, they'll chase you away. You see, someone will just want to frustrate you. Someone who doesn't read your goals will be out there to frustrate you, but you should not give up on that. You should keep on persisting. And once you crack that, you be consistent to your goal. And you must show them that this is what I want to do, and this is the achievement that will come out. You know, you have to explain very well to the, government is a line of people. So it has to go through different ideas. So your idea must be very concrete, must be strong, and must have value to the government of Kenya or any other government of this world, and the people that you are representing. So that's when now you can at least achieve something from the government. So for us to be able to get this government bigwigs to be with us and work together and have any conversation with them, we have been able to have that solid ideas that we sell to them respectfully, if I have to say that. Yeah, you have to be obedient, you have to be loyal, and be perfect in whatever that you are doing. And that's the government for you.
All right. Now, one last question for you. Going forward, we're looking at the next financial year. Yes. What would you expect? What are your members saying that they need from this government in light of some of the proposals that have been put forward with this finance bill? I mean, should it be as is, or even with the amendments that have come or will come, if it's passed into law, it becomes an act of Parliament. What are you expecting to change from the government? What are you requiring? What are your members wanting from this government? You
know, our members doesn't want much. What you want is the fuel cost to come down, because that is the engine of everything that we do at the border sector. That's what we depend on. It's like water for a human being. So for us, our main focus is on fuel costs. If there is a way the government can go work around the policies and bring the cost of fuel down, it will spur our economy, our sector, because our people will be able to make something out of that. Then number two, the cost of the spare parts. That we pledge that the government even zero rates all the taxes, because once I have my money, I'll go buy sugar, I'll pay VAT on sugar, I'll pay VAT on milk, I'll pay VAT on so many other things. So let the government make this humble environment where I'm working, at my income, my source of income place, let it be cheaper for me to access that income. So once I access that income, then I can spend it on any other thing. So the government, one, they must make sure that the fuel cost comes down, because that is the engine of our income. Number two, the cost of the spare parts must be cheaper. The motorcycle themselves, they must bring a policy that zero rates even everything. Because once I acquire this motorcycle, then I'll be able to generate more income from it, and I'll spend that income all across. So, yeah, the taxes must come down.
All right. Mr. Waweru, earlier you were giving some key points on what the government should and can do to be able to collect more. I heard you welcoming the idea of onboarding the young people who are operating in the digital space, but you gave the proposal of them, to be taxed gradually. Talk to us about some of the other ideas you have that this government should and can employ to be able to offer a better future for Kenya. In brief.
Maybe it's not more to the government, but to we the citizens. Sometimes I think last year, but one, we had an article of a fundi tailor somewhere in Baringo who was taxed and was like, how? So as far as you are conducting an activity in the name of a business, you ought to contribute towards the development from your own self and then to the larger community, which then gets to the national. In view of that, we'll be open to be taxed, but at the same time, we put the government to account. We'll put from the different levels of the government. If it's now from the county perspective, we can put those people to account, as in to minimize the wastage. Because yes, as you are asking the question, is it a budget for corruption? I may not say corruption, but wastage. Even in your own very homes, you don't entertain wastage. But this is wastage of resources for where they were not meant to make an impact. So it is more of us, the citizens, to be open. And as such, we tap into the opportunities that are presenting to ourselves.
Okay.
We are talking of the bigger market. Have we been facilitated? We have development partners, again, who have always been saying we have footprints in different countries. Are we, the Kenyans, looking into that market? Because then, as an entrepreneur again, where is my market? Am I in the blue economy or in blue ocean strategy as far as I pursue my market? Am I in the red ocean business strategy? In view of that, it seems as majority of Kenyans, we are in the red ocean where we are killing each other and as such complaints. But if I have a niche, there is no competition. And as such, I will be open and welcome to contribution.
So we need to be creative and
innovative.
All right, all right. All right, now I have a final question, and it's a question that came from the panel. As quickly as you can, I know we're completely out of time, but one of the things that came about is a question that you asked this question and everyone had an expression on their face. Who are these people that we elected, all right? Now we're heading into an election year in just 2 years, all right? Just 2 years will be in election year. I want all of you, to give, starting with you, sir.
Yeah.
And as brief as we possibly can. I know you have a point to make. Starting with you, Mr. Bosi. I want all of you to come up with 3 things about who are the people we need to elect the next time round. Mr. Bosi, 30 seconds, your point, and then your 3 things that you know, the kind of leaders we need to be electing. Quick as you can, please.
Okay, thank you. The 2 things I needed to clarify is whether there is any hope for SMEs in this country. I say yes, there is hope, especially based on what happened today. The government heeding to the people, listening and toning down and reducing some of those, dropping some of those tax proposals means there is hope.
Positive sign?
Yeah, we pray that they will always be listening to the people even before they come up with such kind of proposals that hurt people.
Before matters get out of hand.
The public participation will be more proactive than reactive.
All right, fair enough.
We are only not defending what has already been put on the table, but actually saying this is what needs to be done. And then the other issue is, the other question that you had asked is whether there is budgetary corruption. I'd say yes, and I will say why there is budgetary corruption. You know, every year there is the Office of the Auditor General. They produce a lot of audit reports. A big percentage, like county governments, almost 99% of the county governments have either qualified adverse opinions, and this means there is evidence of corruption. If you just want to catch who is the thief, take all these reports, read them, and make a decision, and those people need to go to jail. And of course, if you look at even other state corporations, they have damning reports that have been produced by the Auditor General. If those reports can be picked by the ESC, investigate, follow that, and take action, you will be fighting corruption in a very proactive way. As long as those don't get acted upon, then the fight against corruption is not real. And then the other issue is who should we elect?
Yeah, 3 points. 3 things. Bullet point, please.
One, and maybe just have to clarify before I make my point. Because you will always imagine that people spend a lot of money. If you look at the salary of an MP.
I'm so sorry, sir. We are completely out of time.
So we should elect people without demanding for anything from them. We should elect people who have ideas, not money. Big ideas, not big money. The day we elect people with big money, that is the beginning of all the evils in this. And then number 2, we should elect people with integrity and also people who have a track record of performance.
All right.
Not first time people who are just trial and error.
All right, all right. Yeah. Before we finish with that desk, Mr. Mubadi, what kind of leader should we elect? 3 points, please, quick as you can.
Number 1, we need to elect someone who listens to the people that he leads. Number 2, someone who is focused and dedicated to the work that he asked for. Then number 3, we need someone who has the people's heart, who understands the economy, how the country is, and how he can pull his people from the poverty, I think.
All right, right. Mr. Aweru, your quick points on who should we elect?
We would seek a God-fearing person who has self-conscious, because with that we'll have a heart and we'll have the conscience of reasoning to the people.
All right. That's your main point.
Yeah.
All right. Now to the purple table. Let's start with you. Let's say ladies first. 3 points, quick as you can. You asked who are these that we've elected. So I ask you, who should we elect? 3 points.
Number 1, visionaries. Number 2, people who merit. And number 3, people who qualify to be readers. Thank you.
Right, right, right. And last but not least, and this is not nepotism because this is my namesake, Victor, your points, 3 things.
I think number 1, as my colleagues have said, is electing people based on merit and track record that is verified. A person of integrity, again, based on track record. And number 3 is someone who doesn't have the burden of having gone spending or mortgaged their house for them to get an elected position. Because I think that is the biggest burden that a lot of leaders have, in the sense that our framework is you have to be in a political party, you have to pay a lot of money, so when you get there, it's a question of return on investment.
Maybe we should have a conversation on the cost of elective politics. That should be another conversation. But good people, you have heard the views of the panel that you sent us. Again, the question goes back to you. The question initially was, who are these that we've elected? I ask you tonight, who should we elect? And if these are our leaders, what does that say about us? because they say leaders are a reflection on the society that they come from. So if these are our leaders, who are we? Question is mine. The answer is yours.
Absolutely. Deno from Thoru watching, saying you're enjoying the show. You also say here, stop tear gassing in Kenyan police. They're fighting for their rights. It is wisdom to relieve and empower the needy. And also Meshach watching us all the way from Meru County. Wiki watching us from Marsabit. Thank you so much for your splendid company as well as your tremendous feedback. We've had CPA Martin Wawiru joining us